It's been a weird year for the Bucks, and it's crazy saying that because they're sitting 30-13, second in the East. But watching them, it hasn't felt right.
Sure.
And today they made a big move that surprised some, and others were like, I'm not that surprised because things weren't going that well. Adrian Griffin is out after 43 games as head coach, Morgan. One of the shortest coaching tenures that we have seen in NBA history. You got to go back to Rudy Tomjanovich. He coached 43 games with the Lakers. Bob Weiss coached 30 games with the Sonics. And Jerry Tarkanian lasted only 20 games with the Spurs. Now, what makes this so unique is this team was winning games. I mean, for all their flaws, especially defensively, they were winning.
6-4 in their last 10 games. And I mean, what game was it that we were watching? We're like, oh, they're starting to figure it out. It was the game against the Boston Celtics. And it was a national televised game. And it was like, oh, there's something more here. They are figuring this out. And then we obviously watched them closer when they were playing the Sacramento Kings, and it was Dame time at the end of that one, a little annoying. But yeah, things seemed like they were getting figured out.
But apparently not fast enough. And obviously when these things happen, players are maybe involved. And there's so many layers to this story because not only is Adrian Griffin out, but it sounds like Doc Rivers may be leaving TV and becoming the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll get to all that. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway is like the Adrian Griffin hire was so interesting because, he'd played in the league. He had been an assistant since 2008. But I was just thinking about a team that has championship aspirations that maybe you'd want someone who has the experience, who's been there before. I was pushing for Nick Nurse, but the reports are that Giannis wanted nothing to do with Nick Nurse. He ends up going to the Sixers. But when you fire Bud, when you make the decision to fire a guy who won like 70% of his games, won a championship, you better bring in the right guy. And obviously it did not work at all in Milwaukee.
And you mentioned Nick Nurse in that situation. Well, look what the Sixers are doing with a star player in Joel Embiid who just scored 70 points the other night. And I think sometimes when you lean in too much on, okay, what do our star players want? Oh, they don't want too much structure. They don't want to be told too many things. Yeah, everyone wants freedom. Nobody wants a boss. But at the end of the day in sports, there's times where you need certain types of management and leadership. And with everything that is going on right now with the Bucks, it's just, to me, this is so ruthless to fire Adrian Griffin. And on top of that, this is what is just so impressive to me and ruthless. Woj, in his report on ESPN today, was, all right, we just heard in the last hour, the Bucks told Adrian Griffin that he will be gone. And then within this same report, Woj starts talking about, and Doc Rivers is a very serious candidate for this job.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wait. So all these people are just talking, chattering behind the scenes to like weasel this guy out and weasel this guy in. I just find it so ruthless, weird, kind of gross, but whatever.
So the Bucks are one of the best offensive teams in the NBA this year. The biggest drop-off has been defensively. And you go, where do you assign blame to this? Do you assign it to Adrian Griffin and some of the defensive schemes where they're playing defense a little different than they have in the past, right? Lopez is not in drop coverage. He's comfortable there. That guy is a pretty good defensive player. Giannis is a good defensive player there too. Maybe you should trust their judgment. Instead, they've been getting shredded in the paint because their bigs are coming out to help, and the defense on the perimeter at the point of attack has been awful this year.
Absolutely awful. But like you just said, where do you point blame, right? Well, when Adrian Griffin took over as head coach, Drew Holiday was still on the team, right? He didn't know that this whole Dame Lillard thing was going to happen. And then that happened. So you lose a lot of your perimeter defense.
And Grayson Allen.
Your defensive scheme changes right there. Your offensive scheme even changes a little bit with that adjustment. But like we're saying, you are not seeing them succeed on the defensive end. And I felt like maybe Adrian Griffin came in with what the style that he wanted to go with. And he was like, I think we can still create a winning product around this style. Well, we're seeing that it's not exactly working.
Yeah, so the new coach, if it's Doc Rivers, can come in and change the scheme, but the same flaws remain when Malik Beasley and Dame Lillard are your guys in the backcourt, and they're not going to be lockdown defenders. So you start going into what is this group's ceiling defensively? I mean, to me, they're like an average to below average defensive team. I mean,
even if that's what you're saying. So even if new coach comes in, it's like,
I
what
think
do
they
you
could
want?
tweak some things with the scheme and play more to the liking of someone like Brook Lopez and Giannis, and maybe that improves things a little bit. And they could still be explosive offensively. The reality of the situation is I still think this roster is flawed. And on one hand, I admire the fact that they would go, you know what, this is not working now. We have to cut bait now.
Sure.
We're just over halfway through the season. This is not going to work. The players aren't bought in. We can't have this be a lost season, especially with Dame, especially with Giannis and how much we have invested in this team. But now you got to get it right. And you're looking around going, okay, is Doc Rivers the right guy? And I think out of all the options out there, you're probably going, I go with Doc. He's a guy that's been around star players. He's had playoff disappointments for sure.
Go in that angle, but yes.
He's also coached some really good teams.
Absolutely.
And, if we want to go back through his list, I mean, we see that he's had teams that have been banged up over time. His Clippers days with Chris Paul being banged up. They dealt with a lot of chaos there.
Sure.
But yeah, you bring up the 3-1 series leads, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him. But if I am making this move, you can't go with like just the interim guy. You can't just go, what about this Joe random coach? No, you need someone that has some level of championship experience, playoff experience, who's been there, done that. And Doc has done that. Whether you think he's one of the great coaches or not, he has a resume.
Yes. And I get how you have to get this right. And even having the resume alone, having that name alone, you will get people excited. But you will also have some of the rational people come in and go, yeah, look at the resume, look at the postseason resume. And you have championship aspirations. I mean, you had a coach in Bud who you were like, if you don't win this championship, you're going to be fired. He won the championship, got a little bit more time under his belt, right? And then you saw how that all went down with him. And then you also see that the grass isn't always greener. They went to Adrian Griffin, and now they're already moving on from him. So I see everything that you're saying about Doc, and I feel like a lot of people will see that as well. But when Woj was reporting on this on ESPN, he was just talking about like, hey, you only have so much time around Giannis and Dame,
sure,
and you have to make sure you're capitalizing on that. I get that, but sometimes these you just think like you plug in a new coach and voila.
Yeah, it's not easy to do that like mid-season. But again, someone like Doc who has the experience of like coaching a ton of star players. He's done it from Joel Embiid, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. The list goes on. Tracy McGrady. So he has done that. It's going to be a challenge for him to take over right now. But he's also taking on a veteran team that I think if Doc is open-minded, listens to those guys, he's kind of a player's coach, he'll get them to buy in and everything will be okay. Now, can he take them level to go and win a championship? That's just a different question. I just don't necessarily look at this team as a championship contending team. I think it's a team that can win a lot of games, who could be crazy explosive offensively, but I just have my questions about what they can be defensively with the options in the backcourt. So that's challenging, in my opinion, for the Milwaukee Bucks. The other weird dynamic to the story from The Athletic, league sources say Doc Rivers, who was working, of course, with ESPN after getting fired by the Sixers in May, began to serve as an informal consultant to Griffin because the Bucks wanted him to.
Informal consultant to Griffin. What a title there. And what does that actually mean? What was their relationship? And now this is the guy that's coming in and probably taking over. It's screaming drama to me. It is screaming drama.
Also, Doc, man, how lucky do you get? I mean, we talk about, hey, all these stars, but he keeps getting these opportunities. He had this nice cush gig back on TV with Breen and Burke, and now it's like, oh, I can go back to the league and coach Giannis and Dame.
Doc Rivers has done a fantastic job of putting himself in these positions, whether he's good to people behind the scenes, whether he's good at talking himself up to people, whatever it is, Deuce, he's done a fantastic job of putting himself in these positions to talk to the right people to get the job that he wants. Be like Doc Rivers.
And one last thought on this whole thing.
What?
I mean, I don't know Adrian Griffin, but I feel for him. He's been trying to get a coaching gig for a long time.
Yeah.
He gets this job that was pressure packed, right? I mean, this is, again, a team that has championship aspirations. You're taking over for a coach who is one of the winningest coaches out there, you know, whether it was with the Hawks or the Bucks. So you had this pressure, and then you're gone after 43 games.
Deuce, I think that's a great point you do bring up about Adrian Griffin. And what I will say to that too, I don't think this is going to tarnish or damage him as a head coach in this league. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because they're going to also see the record that he has with this Buck squad, the reasoning behind the championship window with Dame getting older and Giannis not being happy and all these little things. I don't know. I just have one of these feelings. It's not going to totally screw him over for his future.
And that's where I completely disagree. I think it will for a while. And he's probably going to have to go the route of being an assistant again. He was on that grind forever. Like, I don't think he's going to get hired in the offseason after this.
Yeah, well, never say never. I mean, the NBA is a wild place.
What did you guys think about what went down tonight or today with the Milwaukee Bucks? What do you think about the possibility of Doc Rivers coaching this team? Should Adrian Griffin have taken the fall? Drop us some comments below. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe.
Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. The podcast that you know.